right, I think we're recording. Let's see. Yep, we're recording. All right, folks, welcome back to the third bracket as we're going through the Bible Bracket Challenge here at Trinity Falls. Hopefully you're been able to follow along with everything that's been going on with the brackets. And this time we're going to be looking at the Gospels region. And we can just pull it up and show you what we have in store for you today. We have some good matchups for you guys. If you want to see on the right side, we have Mary, Herod, Thomas. We have some really good people that will be a part of this bracket today. We do also have a guest with us today, Jim Engstrom, who was in the audience last time. Will actually show his face if he has something to say. And as always, Braylon Tempe. How you doing? Are you sheltering in place?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm having a good time.
Great. Very good. How's the baby?
She's pretty happy to have two parents home.
Sweet. All right, cool. How are you doing, Jim?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Okay, cool. Well, let's get to the first matchup. This is a one seed against a 16. We're going to try to do this quicker than we did last time, but we got the Virgin Mary, the mother of Jesus, going up against Mr. Pontius Pilate, or is it Herod the Great?
Herod Antipas.
Okay, why don't we pull that up? Herod is actually, he's just a jerk, really. He's like the kind of person you don't want your king to be. He's self-centered, he's paranoid, and tried to kill the baby Jesus. I think that should get him eliminated pretty quickly here versus Mary. What do you think?
Yeah, Mary has that Magnificat, which is a beautiful song, and then she's one of the two non-Trinity people in the creed, so pretty important.
Very cool. Well, let's if you're following along at home, you can give Mary the points for this one. I think she's moving on to the round of 32. I don't think anyone saw this being close. But the next matchup we have here, you'll see it's Thomas versus Theophilus. And Thomas is infamous for being known as Doubting Thomas. But actually, he's just honest Thomas. I mean, really, he wasn't there when Jesus showed up and he's like, I want to see with my eyes and feel. And that's an important part of John's gospel, is that actually Jesus rose in bodily form, not as a spirit. And also it's Thomas who gives us the question, Lord, we do not know where you're going. And then Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life. And don't know why I said it that way, but he's just, Thomas has some good stuff. What about Theophilus? Most people may not even know who he is.
Yeah, there's not much we do know about him, except for that Luke writes Luke and Acts to him. He says, my dearest Theophilus, you got my last letter, and here are the Acts of the Apostles. And yeah, it's very important that we have him, because Luke wrote all of this to him. And the hard part is we don't know much about him. Some say maybe he was a Jewish priest, or maybe he was Paul's lawyer or a Roman official. There are a lot of possibilities, but we don't know all that much.
I've heard the case that, some people thought that Theophilus may have been some kind of ruling governor of some sort who was checking out Christianity. And Luke was making the case that this is not a violent movement. This is, this is a good movement. When it comes to Thomas, or Theophilus, I feel like in the long run, it seems like Theophilus is more essential to the biblical story than Thomas is. What are your thoughts on that? What are you thinking?
I think Thomas is an interesting case because we do have that negative, like, doubting Thomas idea. But I think in the story of the Bible, like, how often does that come up? Like wrestling with God. And I mean, the people's name Israel is to wrestle with God. And he's very bold. He says, if we're going to die and that's what it takes to visit Lazarus, let's just die. Or like, if we're going to go see Christ. Let's just do it. And
Mhm.
and obviously this is Christian mythology, but a lot of people say he traveled all the way to India evangelizing, and
Mhm.
yeah, it played a big role supposedly outside of what we have in the Bible.
Mhm.
So I think there's a lot to his story that we can overlook if we just boil it down to doubting Thomas.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's fair, and for him. But I mean, he's an important part of the story because he keeps things moving. But who do you have moving forward here on your bracket?
This one I have Thomas, and I
Okay.
think it's a tough one because in the story of the Bible, you would be missing a huge, incredibly important part without Theophilus,
Right.
but Thomas seems to represent the story of the Bible. So it's kind of a
Mhm.
tough choice.
Yeah, if this was Luke going up against Thomas, I would say Luke.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But really, it's Theophilus who is the recipient of the letters, not just not the writer. So yeah, I feel fine putting Thomas into that next spot there. So if you had Thomas, he's going to get the big win here. I don't know if that's an upset. Thomas was 8. Theophilus, it was a pretty close one. It was a pick 'em. The next one, we always find that these 5 versus 12s are really good matchups, and 12s, in the basketball tournament, have a good chance of bringing down a 5. And so we have Judas Iscariot and Nicodemus. Tell us about these guys.
Yeah, I mean, first off, with Judas, he ruined a perfectly good name. a very popular name, and
Yeah.
had a Jewish hero by the name of Judas, and now we only think of it as a negative name. But
Mm-hmm.
he, is important to the story. He betrayed Jesus. He was one of his followers. We don't know a ton about him before he did that, although I think it's John that says he tended to take a little off the top because he was the treasurer.
Mm-hmm.
So he seemed like he had some issues before that. And when he did betray Jesus, some books say it was because of money. He was greedy. Some say that Satan actually entered him and took hold. And there's not quite sure why he did that, but he did. And it is important to the biblical story, but in a very bad way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you have Nicodemus, a Pharisee who comes to Jesus by night, and really he has one of these first big conversations with Jesus that really flow throughout the book of John. You have his conversation, the Samaritan woman. You have the blind man in chapter 9, and Nicodemus. Without him, we don't get John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son. And also Nicodemus is someone who will show up later in the life of, actually after the death of Jesus, and will help bury him. And so they're both important to the story. I feel like though with Judas though, he's essential in the cross happening, but I just don't like him. Like, I just don't like that. I'd rather see someone like Nicodemus be able to take out Judas. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I look at Nicodemus and I kind of start to think that he experienced some holy discontentment. We talk about that in the church as a great thing when Christians are a little unsettled by complacency and unsettled by how we're just status quo, and we know that the Spirit has something greater for us. And I think that's what we see in Nicodemus. He says, something's not right about the law. I don't know if I'm saved or not. I need to go to this man and figure out what's going on. And it seemed that even though he still didn't get it after that talk, it changed his life, because we do see him after the cross.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is very significant.
Yeah, I do like I like Nicodemus going through here.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he's definitely more important.
Yeah.
So should we put him through?
I think
Yes.
so.
Let's do it. Jim likes it. Nicodemus. There it is. All right. This next one is a really odd matchup. It's the Apostle John versus the Samaritan woman of John chapter 4. And so in a lot of ways, who's more important? Without John, you don't have the Samaritan woman. He's the only gospel writer that has the story. But also the Samaritan woman is she plays a role in showing Jesus' ministry as someone who is on the outside, who gets it. And that seems to be a common theme throughout the entire scriptures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is an important story. There's a lot to say about John, and I think that he was one of the inner circle of Jesus. And I personally think that Revelation and the book of John and his writings are hugely important to the New Testament. There's a lot more I could go on about that, but what are you thinking for this?
I'm a big John boy. I think I like John a lot. I think I like his letters. I like Revelation. I like the Gospel of John. I like the Gospel of John because it's so different than the other Gospels. It's nothing like the Matthew, Mark, or Luke. He's completely doing something different, and I'm a big John guy. So I like the Samaritan woman. She's welcome to come over anytime and hang out and talk about living water and stuff. But I do think John goes through here.
All right.
And by doing it this way, we don't have that 30 seconds of you walking over to the board.
Yeah.
Maybe people miss that that public access feel. All right, here we got Martha going up against the 11 seed Joseph, and this is the father, the stepfather of Jesus. And when we were putting these together, we all felt really strongly that Joseph is a low seed, and we just kind of had a hard time figuring out what importance he plays in the story other than being stepdad. One of the important things that Joseph does do, which we shouldn't play down, is that he does name Jesus. God tells Joseph that he will name the kid Jesus. And in doing so, he's adopting Jesus. But a lot of theologians say that's also Jesus adopting us. And so I do like that image. But he's going up against Martha. Or what are your other thoughts on Joseph before we go to Martha?
Yeah, it was funny when I was seating these, I had Mary and Joseph very high, and then I started looking at it, and I was like, what did he actually do? And yeah, I kept putting him lower and lower and lower, and I think another thing, staying married to Mary, that takes a lot of faith, because at that time that would have been an incredible thing to do, have your wife get pregnant, you're not sure why, or not even wife, get pregnant, you're not sure what's going on, God talked to you, but you're like, so he does have that for him, that faith to stick with it.
I've heard that, because you don't hear of Joseph anywhere after the birth narrative, a lot of people say he probably died, or it's likely that he's dead by the time Jesus is in his ministry, because you don't see him at the cross, and you also see Jesus actually handing over the Apostle John to be the protector of the mother. And so if Joseph was around, that wouldn't make sense. So
yeah.
But then we got Martha, who is the sister in the story in Luke 11, I believe, where there's the two sisters, and Martha is sitting at the feet of Jesus, and Mary is Mary the one who's busy?
Martha's busy.
Martha's busy. Okay, Martha,
Yeah.
You're so busy. And I don't really think either of them really should go through. I mean, maybe if we were able to switch over Martha with Mary, but what are you thinking here?
I think, I was reading, I think there's a couple places where Martha's mentioned, and I think she has very aggressive attitude, like just do it,
Mhm.
like work hard, or like follow Jesus if you're gonna follow him. And like I think she has that very almost Peter like attitude towards things where you just do it. And I
Mhm.
think that is important. I think she's also the sister of Lazarus,
Yeah.
isn't she? I think.
Yeah.
So there's that important tie-in. I don't know if that's more of just an Easter egg, if
Uh-huh.
anything at all, but
Sure.
yeah, this is a tough one because
Yeah. I guess between the two of them, I feel Joseph is probably more important here.
Wait, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is Martha, isn't she someone's mother?
Who is she the mother of?
Or am I thinking of somebody else?
It's possible she was a mother.
No, I'm not as biblically knowledgeable as you guys.
Well, no, I thought she was the one who was sitting at Jesus' feet. Maybe that's why I even put her on the bracket. But what are you thinking here?
Well, I'm just thinking Joseph. He's like using an old name. He's got nothing here.
All right. Should we give Jim the pick on this? You want
We
Martha?
can.
You want Martha going through? This might upset a lot of folks at home.
Oh,
All right,
it's
let's be responsible and let's put Joseph through. How about that? I think he's a little more important.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's put Joseph through. Next, we have Peter versus Pilate. Hey guys, let's just call it here, okay? I think Peter is way more important than Pontius Pilate. Pilate gets into the. I don't think anyone sees this as an upset. This is a complete takedown. Are you guys in agreement there?
I think the one thing I have to say for Pilate is that there are, I think it was Coptic and Ethiopian traditions that he actually converted because he was so reluctant to crucify Jesus. He
Sure.
actually converted and became a martyr.
Okay,
So
that's cool. Yeah.
interesting, but not biblical, and who knows?
Yeah, and then I mean it's Peter. The rock. Next up, after that we got Andrew versus Lazarus, and this may be tighter than we think it might be. We know Lazarus from the story of him coming back from the dead. It was not a resurrection, though. It was a resuscitation, meaning he was dead and brought back to life. Resurrection is something that Jesus experienced, and that what we will experience at the final day, when God will, there'll be the resurrection of all things. So, I mean, Lazarus, it's a cool story. It really gets the everything moving with Jesus' crucifixion in the Gospel of John. But then you have Andrew, who is the one who brings Peter to meet Jesus. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I think it is a tough one because without Andrew, do you have Peter and questions like that? I think with Lazarus, you do have some gems like Jesus wept. Like how beautiful is that image?
Yep.
And then it is the longest story in John outside of the Passion story. So he seemed to think it was important that this man who Jesus loved was
So I've heard, are you going there?
Yeah, I just dropped that in there for you.
Yeah, I definitely think that in the Gospel of John, it's quite possible that it is Lazarus who is the disciple who Jesus loved, because we don't hear about that story. We don't hear Jesus call anyone the disciple he loved until the story of Lazarus, where he says, "Look how he loved him." And so then I'll backtrack. When Jesus is at the cross, he looked at the disciple he loved, Lazarus, and had Mary entrusted to him. So I'll take that other one back with saying John was that. Again, it's a theory. I think there's some sense to it. There's John could be called John. That would be easy. So
yeah.
I think I like Lazarus here. What are you guys thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a classic Cinderella story, being resuscitated and all.
Yeah, for sure. He once was dead and now is alive. And then he died again, probably. We don't have record of that. So let's put Lazarus on. I think he's, but I feel bad for Andrew. He's always Andrew, Peter's brother. And that I'm sure he had some kind of complex about that. That could probably be tough. Last one, we have J the B, John the Baptist, versus his father, Z, Zechariah. Do we need to talk about this much?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, you have a Elijah type figure, and then his dad.
Yeah. Zechariah is a cool guy. I mean, we like him, but he got his tongue tied quite a bit. But I say J the B. And when we say J the B, we're talking about John the Baptizer, because we have no idea if he was a Baptist. He could have been a Lutheran. We don't know.
I have a feeling.
I have a feeling. Oh man. So Lutherans are like all about like, they try to like defend not doing immersion as the only way to do baptism. I think baptism is water. It doesn't matter how much, but there's the text where it says Jesus came up out of the water, and people who believe in immersion baptism always point there like, look, Jesus was immersed because he came up out of the water. And some Lutheran scholars say, no, he just walked up out of the water. Like he was like walking up on shore, and it just is like, come on, of course he was dunked. You got a grown man, you got the river, why aren't you, but the first earliest pictures of John the Baptist baptizing people are him sprinkling. So interesting. So let's move into the Sweet 16, the round of 32. We have Mary, a 1 seed, going up against Thomas, an 8 seed. Mary, I mean, she's a 1 and really highly thought of by God. And how do you feel about this matchup?
Yeah, I think it is interesting. She was looked upon with favor by God, and I kind of almost see her as a Samuel type figure, like a person that God looked upon and brought in salvation. And Samuel did it with David. He brought him in by anointing him, and Mary gave birth to Jesus. So she is kind of like a someone who brings in salvation.
Yeah, I wish we talked about Mary a little more. She deserves, we don't worship her, but she is a real important part of the biblical story. And I like putting her through here. Thomas, we like Thomas, but I just don't know if he can carry what Mary was able to carry. I think without Mary, we just don't have Jesus. And maybe God would find someone else to do it through, or I don't know. But important that he was born through a real human, because he had a real human nature. All right, we have another awkward one here. Nicodemus versus John. Again, we got a funny thing where we have Nicodemus, but we don't know about Nicodemus without John. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think, it's another one of those instances where it's like what the person did versus what they contributed. John, he did a lot, and then he also contributed a ton.
Yep. Yeah, again, it's kind of like Thomas. I mean, I probably even like Nicodemus more than Thomas. I wish those two were going up against each other. I could see Nicodemus throwing some pretty heavy haymakers there. But I think I like John moving through here. I mean, it's really going to be hard but then that's going to set up a John versus Mary, and that'll be fun to talk about that. Let's move John through. Joseph versus Peter. Really? Come on, man. This is. I don't think if you're following at home, you see anything worth debating here. Unless for some reason, is this Joseph of Arimathea, or is this Joseph? Do we know for sure? We're talking about Joseph, Jesus' stepfather, correct?
Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah, me too. Lock him in. This is actually a pretty simple here.
Yeah, this round is.
Yeah, I think this round is very simple. I think the next round is going to be very difficult.
Very tough.
But let's look over the next matchup: Lazarus versus John the Baptist. John the Baptist, again, he's an essential guy who, he shows up in all 4 of the Gospels, and he plays an essential role of getting Jesus prepared for his ministry. And I just feel Lazarus, again, we love him. We think he's cool. We think we'd enjoy having dinner with him.
Yeah.
I actually think I'd rather have dinner with John the Baptist because he's going to say something super loud. He's going to yell at you. I imagine John the Baptist just being actually quite entertaining to be around. So
Yeah, wouldn't want to eat the same things though.
No, he'd be sticking to his diet. I wonder if that's some kind of precursor to a paleo style diet. I don't know if that fits because there's maybe too much sugar in the honey. But yeah, J to the B. I think he's where we need to go here.
Yep.
All right, Jim. How's your bracket looking at this point?
It's not looking good, but I'm okay with that.
Are you seeing any things you would change here?
Well, yeah, but I mean, I can't argue too much with your choices. I will save arguments for the next round.
Okay, so we have Mary going up against John, and then we have Peter going up against John the Baptist. Which one do we want to do first? Do you want to do Peter and John the Baptist first? Switch it up a little bit?
Sure, we can. Yeah.
Do it. All right, Peter, the rock, the foundation, the guy who, teaches us so much about what it means to follow Jesus and also what it looks like to not follow Jesus. And also, the one who on the day of Pentecost preaches and thousands, come to believe. Jesus says on his confession of Jesus being the Messiah that he says, on this rock, I will build my church. And, he's talking about Peter's confession, but also Peter is a huge part of building that church. He's kind of considered the first, head of the church, and, kind of interesting would be if Peter was to go through and he would face Paul in the final New Testament showdown, Peter versus Paul would be really good.
Yeah.
But we have Peter versus John the Baptist, and man, what do we think here? What are some of the things you're thinking about here in this part?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think, this might be a little bit too far-fetched, but I think Martin Luther is kind of a Peter figure, or vice versa, where it's like, if you're going to sin boldly. And if you think you're following God, but you're not quite sure, just follow. And Peter does that. And we see that. And we do even see some Paul versus Peter action going in Galatians and Acts and some of their little headbutting, because Peter just I'm following Christ to the best of my abilities, and I'm gonna go along. And he did have some missteps. He did get a little bit cowed in by the Judaizers, but allegedly the first pope. We don't like that language, but
yep. Sure, the first bishop of Rome, for sure. I know that Peter, one of the things I like about him is that if he was, I'm trying to think of him on the Enneagram, and we should have done Enneagrams for all these guys, but I think Peter on the Enneagram is probably a straight 8.
Oh, for sure.
He's the kind of guy who shoots then aims. And what do they say? Fire, shoot, aim. I don't know. That's kind of what I see in him. And again, with Peter, you got a guy walking on water. John the Baptist, he plays a huge role in preparing Jesus for his ministry. I don't know if John the Baptist has as big a role afterwards, and you're really moving the story forward.
Yeah, and it is. We talk about Jesus and what he did, but if the church and God's kingdom weren't established on earth through the church, salvation is great, but the kingdom of God is essential, and Peter is one of the biggest movers of that. And it'd kind of be like having Elijah and no King David, or Elijah and no Israel. We need the church, and Peter is a big part of that.
Yeah, I guess I'd give the edge to Peter. I think it's a fourth quarter. I think it's I don't think it's a buzzer beater, but I think it's just a few points, over John in the end here. I like Peter moving through here.
Yeah, in my bracket, I have Peter / John winning this, because
Yeah, it's hard
As
to
we
it's hard to
discussed, I
think
figured we'd.
of going against them. Yeah.
Mhm.
Why don't we lock them in? That'll bring us up to 2 more matches then. We got the winner of this next one and then the Elite Eight. So, yeah, we were kind of dreading this one. Mary versus John. Mary is the 1 seed, John is a 4, and these are really important figures for the biblical story. You got Mary, who, again, you guys know what she did. She brought Jesus into the world. John really advances the mission of the church. And interesting, John's gospel doesn't speak of Mary's involvement in the birth of Christ. And, Matthew and Luke do. Mark skips it. John goes all the way back to the creation of the world. And so Mary plays a very small role, or a smaller role, in John's gospel. I wonder if John's throwing some shade at Mary here.
He knew this was coming.
He knew this was coming. Is like, you know what? We're not going to have that in my gospel. Anyway, you see John being able to take Mary, or Mary take John. I think at first I was really leaning strong Mary. More that we've been visiting about the impact of John. I just feel like John is. I think he's. I mean, it's so hard to go against the mother of the Christ.
Yeah.
But it's also really hard to go against John, where we have so many power. We have without John, we don't have the phrase God is love. Just flat out, we don't have it. And I would miss that for sure. I think, let's go back to who would you miss?
Well, let's say if without Mary, you don't have the Word. You don't have Jesus. So who would you miss more?
Well, John would say the Word was in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, John has got a lot of words, but come on. Mary had the Word.
You're right. Yeah, this is hard.
Yeah, the thing I like about John is when you look at his book, and especially Revelation, I really like Revelation. I have a new respect for it, because the way I see his writings is he's saying, yeah, there's this earthly stuff going on, sins, and we have people and all this temporal earthly stuff. But if you peel back the veil, there's cosmic realities. There's big stuff going on. And I think he kind of echoes some of what Daniel was talking about, and in a way, Job. And you see that he's showing that this was not just an earthly event. There was cosmic impact. And you see that in Revelation, depending on how you view Revelation.
Yep.
I think it's really saying, like, if you saw what was happening behind the scenes, like behind the veil, when Jesus died and rose again, like you would just be floored.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
What about this though? Because you had mentioned earlier, and I'm again deferring to your expertise and your wisdom and your knowledge of the Bible.
But we're deferring to your wisdom.
Okay, so earlier you mentioned about John not even mentioning Mary. So it's clear in this particular matchup, he is underestimating her, and that's going to bite him in this matchup. She's going to show him how great and defiant she was. And she even said some very great defiant things about the day that she lived in, the government and everything. So, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, we knew it was going to get tough, coming down to these final ones, and I'm struggling here. But if I had to choose, and I do have to choose, I'm leaning John.
Yeah, I in mine I actually do have Mary going through, but
I did too. I totally did too.
To Megan about John, and just like how much I love that book, like the darkness and the light and these big things going on that we get to be a part of, and that God is working in, and it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And so, yeah, this will be a spoiler. I think it's John. I think we need to put him through. Again, this happened in our bracket last time. We saw someone who we didn't see going all the way through really going through. So let's, if you're following at home, let's put John through. Also, we should have done all these videos this way. This is a way better format.
This is so nice.
It's way better. I hope it's a good viewing experience for the folks at home. All right, let's get down to the Elite Eight. Peter versus John. Now the disciples were always worried about this. Is like who would be the best among them, and Jesus was like, "Don't worry about who's best among you. Whoever is least will be greatest." But that's not what we're doing here. We're picking the best right now.
Yeah, we are choosing.
We are choosing the best. I feel at first glance I'm leaning Peter, and I'm thinking about the church, and I'm thinking about the book of Acts, and I'm thinking about his letters. I'm just thinking without him, he becomes really the first disciple, the first apostle who is really moving and shaking the church. John, though, his impact is a little later on in the church, as John's mainly dealing with a very, very serious heresy in the church time, Docetism, where people thought that Jesus seemed to look like a person, but wasn't really a person. And so John, is so going out of his way to say the Word became flesh, and that which we have seen with our eyes and have touched, and Thomas touching him, that he's really showing a very earthly, but also very spiritual Jesus. And Peter, we just don't get a lot of theology or that kind of theology from Peter. We get more action, I think. And I think people are more familiar with the action of Peter over the writing of John, but I could be wrong there for sure.
Yeah.
Actually, what I just said is kind of dumb. Actually, I was just thinking we're all pretty aware of John and Peter, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think with Peter, it is very, very great to have one of the apostles, one of the followers of Jesus, show us what it's like to not know and still go ahead and follow. Like, I think in the modern church especially, we really get wrapped up in but I don't understand. I don't know how it works. I need to know all the theology. I need to know this stuff. And well, it is good to pursue God through theology. I'm a big theology advocate. If you do all of that and don't have that just faith, like I'm just going to walk on the water, don't know how it works, it doesn't make any sense, going to do it. Like if we don't have that example, I think he just shows us what it means to be the church. It's so important.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking forward to the Final Four. Whoever we put through here is likely going to go up against Paul. And I don't know if I see John beating Paul.
Yeah.
I know that's not what this debate is about, is because they're in different regions, but I'm looking forward to that. And if we were going to send the best candidate through here, I'm thinking Peter has the chops to take something on like that and make it interesting.
Yeah, I think because the debate would be who really built the church, was it Peter or Paul? I think that's a great discussion.
Yeah. That's foreshadowing for the next bracket, which we think is probably the easiest to fill out. Maybe the hardest because it's there's lesser known names, and we feel the top seeds are pretty strong there. All right, I feel terrible about saying goodbye to John. I really do. I think his gospel is awesome. I think his letters are great. We think Revelation is great. I don't see John overtaking him though. And through John's gospel, even we have lots of mentions of Peter and talking about Peter and what he did. And so maybe you can give that as a point to John, but I really think Peter. I think Peter takes it here.
Yeah, John's work is, purely literary. It's beautiful and just so much there. But when you talk about the story of the Bible, the church is, it's huge.
Yeah, I think we need to put Peter through here. I think he's the winner of this bracket. I don't know if he's the clear winner because Mary could have gone far, John could have gone far. Any one of these people in the Sweet 16 could have could definitely find themselves in this spot. But we're going to call Mr. Cephas through, and he's going to be making his way to the big dance. And we look forward to that episode. Do you want to scoot over to the Torah edition? Yeah, let's see who we have here. So we have Abraham going to go up against David. That is going to be quite a showdown.
That's a big one.
Peter versus what we're thinking. We could be surprised. There could be some upsets here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, just to see how this all goes down. Hope you're all following along at home. And any final comments from any of you guys?
I just have one final comment.
Bracket busted.
I mean, I could have done that with all of mine so far. So
yeah, same here. I definitely the bracket I'm picking in real time is not the bracket I have at home. So all right, Mr. Kavoth and Braylon and Matt, we will be back again. We have 2 more of these to shoot. We'll do the New Testament letters, and then we'll do the final 4. So have a good one, and we will talk later. I'm going to stop this recording.